Tom Hagen was one of the most essential figures within the Corleone crime family, helping keep the family afloat through difficult periods. Yet, Tom was never a gangster growing up and wasn't of Italian descent. So how did he rise to become a trusted advisor in the most powerful mafia family at the time? Much of his story is unknown and rather heartbreaking. Throughout the two films, Tom is an advisor to both godfathers, giving them advice, and always listening on what the next move was for the family. But despite this, there still isn't much known about Tom. So after doing some research, the information we found on Tom will surprise you. These truths about the consigliere will better help to understand who he actually was, and whether or not he was a good consigliere. Let's reveal the untold story of Tom Hagen. Tom Hagen was born in 1910 to parents of a German-American father named Martin and his mother Bridget. Martin Hagen was a hard-working carpenter, but unfortunately was also a violent alcoholic. By the age of 11, young Tom witnessed his mother contract an eye infection, which would lead her to going blind and dying soon after from a disease. Hagen's father wasn't any help to the young boy, as his alcoholism worsened, and he ultimately drank himself to death, leaving Tom and his sister on their own. The two were sent to an orphanage, but shortly after, Tom ran away and found himself roaming on the streets. As the months went along, Tom was trying to do everything he could to survive. And he also ended up with a serious eye infection. With whisperings around the area that he inherited from his mother, his fate was grim. But little did he know, his life would be turned around forever. A young Sonny Corleone was walking down the street and noticed the struggling Tom, who he once was a playmate with. Sonny was moved by this and brought his friend home, demanding he be taken in. After some thought, Don Corleone allowed the boy to stay in his house and took him to special doctors to cure his eye infection. Though Vito took in Tom, he never formally adopted him out of respect for his real parents. As Tom grew up in the family, he performed very well in school and dedicated to go to law school after graduating from Michigan. One time, he heard Don Corleone say, "A lawyer with his briefcase can steal more than 100 men with guns." Once Hagen finished law school, Vito offered to support Hagen in any endeavor he desired. The Don offered to send him law clients, furnish his office, or start him in real estate. But instead of any of these options, Tom had something different on his mind. He told Vito he would like to work for him instead. The Don was surprised, yet pleased, and asked Tom if he knew who he was, to which Hagen nodded. And so, after his troubling past, Tom was now in a position he didn't think was possible. In the 6 years that followed, Tom quickly proved he was a valuable asset within the family and amassed a large amount of power under Vito. Although he could never be formally admitted into the mafia due to his German ancestry, he was still a valuable asset to the family. Vito made Tom his advocate and also his most trusted advisor in many matters. In many ways, Hagen was akin to Vito, possessing many of the same qualities. Now, during Hagen's rise with the Corleone crime family, the family consigliere was Vito's longtime friend, Genco Abbondando. Genco was the definition of a wartime consigliere. Having been through many obstacles alongside Vito, including the Olive Oil War, Genco possessed incredible foresight into many different situations. But in 1945, things took an unfortunate turn for Genco. He was stricken with cancer, making him bedridden until he passed away shortly after. What happened next shocked the mafia. A few days after Genco's death, Vito appointed Tom Hagen as the new consigliere, making him the first non-Italian consigliere. Word of this decision by Vito immediately spread throughout the mob, and many of the other powerful Sicilian families disrespectfully referred to the Corleones as the Irish Gang. Tom was amused by these comments. Tom's treacherous upbringing and against-all-odds story is truly something to be admired. But there's something more important that needs to be uncovered. The important question we need to answer: was he a good consigliere? Let's analyze his time as the consigliere. For starters, a consigliere is a trusted advisor to the boss. Think of this position as a wise elder statesman within a crime family whose job is to give counsel to the boss. They rank third within the hierarchy of an organization, and are usually obtained by an elder mafioso who has experience. As far as Tom's reign as consigliere, he had a rather eventful era. After Vito was put in the hospital, Tom and the family entered uncharted territory. With a new war begun and Sonny becoming the acting boss, he looked to fully initiate a mob war. Though Tom and Sonny had many heated arguments during the war, it was for good reason. Sonny's temper was well known throughout the mob at the time. and Tom was trying to advise Sonny to take a business approach to many issues. Instead of listening to Tom and the other families on the narcotics deal, Sonny let his anger get the best of him, which inevitably cost him his life. Even when Sonny did show hatred towards Tom, Tom still idolized him, never forgetting that Sonny saved him from the streets. So when Tom received the news of his death, he blamed himself. Once Vito regained his strength and made Michael the new boss, one of the first things he does is demote Tom from consigliere to his lawyer. A confused Tom asks why he was being demoted. The answer? Because he was not a wartime consigliere. One of the major flaws Tom had is that although he had a great mind for the legal side of the business, he lacked the gangster and street mind of that life. And with Michael and Vito's future plan for the purging of the other families, Tom had to be sidelined. Instead of growing up in the streets and around gangsters, his reality was the classroom. After hearing the news of Sonny's death, Tom himself knew he was no fit consigliere for a family at war. His predecessor Jenko would never let this happen. He would have smoked out the rat and his suspicion would have tripled from the inactivity of the other families. Tom simply didn't have these street smarts to connect the dots, which affected his advising during matters of conflict. Tom continued to be part of the family in a reduced role after Michael made his move to Nevada and was excluded from negotiations concerning Hyman Roth. But this decision by Michael was done for the good of the family. After Michael's assassination attempt, he appoints Tom as the acting Don while he's away, calling him a brother and someone he respects. Since Tom had no information on the deal, Michael knew he couldn't move against him, and thus made him the only reliable person to run the empire while he was away. Tom played a big role for Michael during the Senate hearings, helping defend Michael as his lawyer. In addition, Tom helped to secure the friendship of Senator Geary, who later defended Michael during the Senate hearings. Even though Michael lashes out at Tom regarding the Hyman Roth business, Tom denies a lucrative job offer and remains loyal. In Tom's final scene, we see him convincing the old capo regime Frank Pentangeli to keep the silence and submit his loyalty to Don Michael, to which he obliges. This is the last we see of the historic consigliere Tom Hagen. There have been many theories as to why Tom wasn't in Part 3 of The Godfather. Many books released after the original Godfather point to many conclusions of his death. But the main reason the consigliere did not return was because of his real-life contract disputes. The actor who played Tom, Robert Duvall, was unhappy with his contract offer and ended up being written out of the script. But in the end, Tom Hagen had many strengths and flaws, but nonetheless was an instrumental figure in the Corleone crime family.